Harley-Davidson is in trouble after they did this. Today, yet another Harley-Davidson dealership announced that they're closing their doors. But why? We're going to be looking at some of those reasons, not your typical, oh, the CEO or the politics or anything like that. We're going to look at what Harley did to themselves to put themselves in this situation and how a future disastrous type of AMF partnership may be on the horizon for them, which is something that obviously didn't necessarily work out for them the first time. But there's a big difference between the AMF days and what's going on right now. I'll give you my opinion. I want to hear yours. What is the single biggest issue facing Harley-Davidson in your opinion? Let me know down below. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So Vreeland Harley-Davidson up in Pennsylvania is closing its doors after 35 years. This is yet another staple Harley-Davidson that's closing. You know, you've had century-old Harley-Davidson dealerships in New York, California, and various other ones that have been closing their doors over the past couple of years. Kind of at an alarming rate, more so than what you would think. Harley-Davidson dealers, you know, there's always been some that come and go, but these kind of staples in these communities have been there for obviously a really long time. But now you're seeing them start to close down too. Now, of course, some of these places, you know, the owners are retiring, but in other cases, there's a much bigger issue. And it started in the mid to late 90s to the mid 2000s, essentially, when if you wanted to buy a Harley-Davidson, you were most likely going to be paying over MSRP. Unless you had some kind of connection with the dealership, you were going to pay that money. And you weren't going to just walk in and buy a Harley-Davidson either. You were probably going to be put on a waiting list for months or maybe even a year at a time. You might not have even gotten the color choice that you wanted, but as soon as the dealer called, whether you probably already had to put a deposit down, they say, hey, we didn't get the one you exactly wanted, we got this one, do you want it? Yes. I mean, it was essentially like a printing machine for Harley-Davidson. They could do no wrong. And from what I understand, even the little bit of inventory that they could keep in the dealerships, the interest rate on that inventory was low for the dealers. So again, it's like printing machines. So what does Harley-Davidson do? Do they look ahead to the future, or do they take advantage of this and try to build on to the premium image that they are trying to portray? Well, a lot of you already know the answer to this. And what it's known as inside of, the Harley-Davidson community is basically these Taj Mahal dealerships. Think about some of the biggest Harley-Davidson dealers out there. The one that comes to mind for me is Destination Daytona, right? You have 2 floors, you have apparel section, you have in some of these places coffee bars, and half the store is apparel. You have motorcycles everywhere. You have a whole history section in there, big windows, big floor plans. It's basically like a small mall for motorcycle enthusiasts. Even recently, right, with the new CEO, it's about that image, right? We got to keep that premium image. But remember, back in the day, during the AMF days, it was about survival. So yeah, they suffered greatly with their reputation for a long time. People still reference the AMF days. They still think Harleys are unreliable because of what was built back in the 70s. So they really didn't have a chance to build these lavish dealerships, right? They were trying to stay in business long enough for Willie G. Davidson and some of the other Davidsons to buy the company back. But instead of R&D, instead of future-proofing the company in the late 90s, they say, hey, we're going to build the Harley-Davidson experience. The difference is boomers then, right, the baby boomers, which have helped shape Harley-Davidson over the past, 50 years or whatever, have a lot of expendable income at that point. They were basically in their prime at that point. So they could afford these motorcycles. But now the people that are replacing the baby boomers, because we know they're aging out, might not be interested in those, older designs, if you will. Or they might just not want to pay $25,000 or $30,000 for a motorcycle. They gravitate towards the smaller, more economical bikes. And Harley-Davidson has not done the R&D to keep up. FXDR, a bike that's a great example, right? Something really cool, fresh, kind of new idea. It's $20,000 out the gate. The new Sportster series and the Nightsters, right? When those first came out, new fresh take on the Sportster. Yeah, you want the Sportster S? 15, 16, 17,000, I think at one point. The V-Rod, they tried this, right? The V-Rod was around for a little while. What'd they do? Killed it. The Bronx, right? This was a bike that caused a lot of hype with Harley-Davidson. Would it have been priced probably too high? Most likely the answer to that is yes. But still, it created a lot of buzz, killed it off. They have not been able to really keep one of these new models around for more than a decade, sometimes way less than that, like with what we saw with the FXDR. And the one thing about business, any kind of business really, is you got to be able to change and adapt. But you have these dealerships sitting here now who have loads of inventory. This is something Harley-Davidson has pushed dealers to do. And I talked about what happened even out in Japan, Japanese Harley-Davidson dealerships having to sell their own bikes to their own employees to pump up their numbers because the motor company is just sending way too many motorcycles for what these dealerships can realistically handle. So they're no longer printing machines. So now you have these big dealerships that aren't empty by any means, but the upkeep, electric bills have to be enormous to keep them clean. God forbid you have some kind of big maintenance kind of repair or something that has to be done inside of the dealership. This, in my opinion, is literally crushing these dealerships. And what it's going to do too, there's still plenty of Harley-Davidson dealerships out there, right? But the more you start removing these Harley-Davidson dealerships out of the communities they've been serving this long, you need somebody to fill that void. And it might not be another Harley-Davidson dealer, or it might not be somebody trying to carry that name unless something changes at corporate where you don't have all of this overreach, which in my opinion seems like what Harley-Davidson has been doing. Even the current CEO, right? He's about to be out of there, which is a great move for them, but still it's about building this premium brand. When remember, yeah, Harley-Davidsons have always been expensive, but the dealerships, you didn't have to have these grand mall-sized dealerships to go along with it. It was still kind of seen as a working man's motorcycle and a working man's kind of fun hangout experience, right? People don't necessarily go to these dealerships to, just hang out. They will for bike nights and events and things like that. But do you need all of that? The other, 6 days a week or 4 days a week or whatever that, you literally just have sporadic customers here and there. It's like you get a good job, you buy a nice new big house, and then you end up taking a pay cut, and then you're like, man, I can't afford the upkeep on this house anymore. They're basically in the same situation, or at least that's what it looks like from the outside looking in, and dealers are expressing some of this concern as well. They don't have the customers to fill the void. They have way too many motorcycles and not enough people to buy them. Add on some of the perceptions and some of course, some of those political things that we talked about over the past year, and you have a recipe for disaster with an American icon. And so maybe a partnership with another company is a good move for Harley-Davidson. Maybe it will be, I don't know. I mean, they would have to be really careful because that, of course, could hurt their entire image for another decade. And the last thing they need, with dealerships closing, high overhead, not selling enough motorcycles, you don't have the riders to replace your core audience, and you don't even really have enough bikes to sell to the audience you really want to capture right now. Last thing you want is, people thinking now Harleys are unreliable once again. That's a way to really put the motor company out for good, and we don't want to see that. So if they do decide to partner up with somebody, it needs to be somebody freaking solid. And the CEO has to provide a better vision, has to provide more support, not only for the big dealerships, but this whole brand identity crisis, which it seems Harley-Davidson is in. Going back to your roots just a little bit, trying to capture some of those new riders with some new, fresh ideas and stand behind some of these motorcycles, give them a little bit of time to flourish, that might be the best call. The biggest tragedy here, man, is obviously the communities that are served by some of these long-standing dealers that are closing now, the employees that work for these dealerships, of course, and the community that has essentially made Harley-Davidson who they are. They're aging out, and now they're seeing, their favorite brand essentially struggling without them, but they can no longer help them. They can only stand on the sideline and hope Harley gets it together. Will Harley shrink to this, smaller boutique brand that's only for the wealthy, or can they dig themselves out to have a much wider appeal to a bigger audience once again? That's yet to be seen, but we're definitely rooting for them, at least here on the Hegshot Rides channel for sure. There you go. There's my opinion. I'd love to hear yours. What do you think the single biggest issue facing Harley-Davidson dealers is? Let me know down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.